Hello guys, and welcome to the review of the Tier 10 British medium tank, which is the FV4202, and which I think is an absolutely underrated tank. Now, I'll explain to you why I think that. I'll give you a full rundown of the statistics of this tank, I'll compare it to other Tier 10 medium tanks, and I'll show you a game where you can really see how I think you should be playing this tank, and where of course I got a pretty good result. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let's have a look at the statistics. Here we are, let's have a look at the statistics of the FV4202. Here you can see a selection of all of the Tier 10 medium Tech 3 tanks. I've left out the 140 because it's really similar to the 62A, and the 140 is just not as relevant anymore since the 62A is just so much better, so I left the 140 out of the comparison. Alright, so you can see that the DPM of the FV4202 is just pretty average. I mean, it's with 3,281, it's the second lowest. Only the pattern has got lower DPM, but really not by a lot, as you can see. So the DPM isn't amazing, but that is with standard ammo. If I now click on the hash DPM, you're going to see that it's actually got better DPM than any of the Tier 10 medium tanks, and that is really the key with this tank. You want to be using those hash rounds. Alright, so let's go back to the standard ammo. Now, the standard penetration is 255, which is top notch for medium tanks, and it really needs that good APCR pen, because as you can see, the premium ammo is not heat, unlike on the other tanks, but it's rather it is hash. So it's got 210 penetration, which is the lowest, but the difference is the alpha. Have a look at that. You do 440 alpha, and all the other Tier 10 medium tanks have got lower alpha. Arguably the 1-to-1 has got 420, but it doesn't have, but it's still 20 less, and it has less module damage because HE explodes inside of the enemy tank, and so the module damage and the amount of times you're going to set enemy tanks on fire or kill crew members is just going to be way more important on the FV4202. Now the rate of fire, 9.3 seconds reload, that is base reload, of course, with food and fuel, and as you can see, it's got 9 rounds a minute, which is, it's not really that high. It's a little higher than the pattern and the E50Ms. Of course, higher than the Progettos, which is an auto reloader. Also higher than the 1-to-1, but lower than classical medium tanks such as STB or even the Leopard, which has got crazy rate of fire, or even the 62A. So rate of fire is pretty mediocre. 6.4 seconds reload. That is of course higher than the lower alpha medium tanks such as T62A and Leopard. But of course, if you get to pen those hash rounds, have a look at the DPM. That 6.4 second reload time is not going to matter to you at all. Now, the caliber, we don't really care. Shell velocity is good as on all the other medium tanks that are not Russian, because non-Russian tanks don't get that kind of bonus. They've got less shell velocity, 1478, but that is still very, very fast shell velocity. Now, the aiming time, 1.9 seconds. That's just really low aim time. Of course, the 62A with this insane stabilization has got less aim time, but it's just, it's just okay aim time. It's the highest amongst the Tier 10 medium tanks, but I think it's still not that high. You can still work with it, so that is not really a major downside. Now, here comes another interesting part. Have a look at the gun depression. You got 10 degrees of gun depression. That is really, really nice, because it allows you to work ridge lines and to utilize more positions and thus be more effective in the game. And it's just a very comfortable tank to play, because you don't really have to work around that gun depression like you would have to on tanks such as the T62A or the 1-to-1, which have got even lower gun depression. 62A having 7 and the 1-to-1 having 6 degrees. So 10 degrees of gun depression is really, really chill. Now, to the engine power, doesn't really matter all that much. The tank's got 50 km top speed, but 40 km average speed, so you're not really a fast tank, but you've got the same mobility as a 62A, or nearly the same mobility as an STB, so it's not great, but you can deal with it, especially because the main part about this tank is the gun, and the mobility is just fine enough. Now, credit coefficient isn't that high, and you're not going to really be expected to make a lot of credits in this tank, because you're going to fire hash most of the time, if you know where to aim, and if you really want to pump out the maximum you can get from this tank. So you're probably going to fire hash a lot, so really you should not expect to make any credits at all. You are most likely going to lose credits all the time. Alright, so that was it for the statistics of this tank. Let's just have a look at the loadout that I'm packing with me here in the garage. So I'm taking the multi-rep kit, of course, as you should, the repair kit and the adrenaline because you just really want to maximize that DPM when you can. And if you're in a situation where you know you're going to be able to shoot a lot and a lot of enemy tanks and preferably even pen them with Hesh, then just use that adrenaline and just get absolutely brutal DPM with Hesh, obviously. So then for provisions, the improved fuel just to increase the mobility by a bit, because that is obviously one of the a little weaker aspects of this about this tank. The putting in tea and the black tea just to really improve the statistics of this tank and to make it stronger. You know, get that aim time down, get the reload time down. You know the game. Alright, as for ammunition, I'm packing 42 APCR and 30 Hesh. Of course, the golden Hesh shells. I don't take any standard HE because they have less pen than the gold HE and they do the same damage, so there is no advantage in using the standard HE. The golden Hesh are simply better, and since I want to make this tank as good as it can be, I'm obviously taking the Hesh shells, and I also just want to increase my chances of penetrating my Hesh shells to the max, so definitely pack that Hesh. Now 42 standard rounds, which are the APCR, they don't have the greatest pen, 268 average pen, as you saw in the statistical review. Or I actually have to correct myself. They have they do have 268. Anyways, you got 268 pen, which isn't great, but it's definitely good enough to be able to get you through most situations. Of course, you're gonna have to aim well with this tank because there is no loading heat and just dumping your shell on the front of the tank, or the enemy tank, because obviously the APCR has got less pen, so you're probably gonna have to aim at most enemy tanks frontally if you want to shoot APCR. Now sometimes you can't pen enemy tanks with Hesh, so APCR is the better choice, or if you want to track and penetrate enemy tanks, then APCR is definitely also the better choice than the Hesh, because obviously the Hesh is a HE round and it's not going to do well against space armor or against track. So if you fire Hesh, you always want to be able to hit flat normal armor. If you know that you're going to have to shoot space armor, let's say sides of a Sheridan or the front of a Sheridan even, then you want to use the APCR. Because the APCR is going to go through that space armor and still deal maximum damage, whereas the Hesh rounds are just going to explode on the outside and do maybe 80 to 100 damage. Now for equipment, I'm taking calibrated shells to increase that standard pen, because you really want to just increase your chances of being able to penetrate enemies with APCR if the Hesh doesn't go through, and you want to increase your Hesh penetration to be able to use the Hesh as often as possible. Defense system, because improved modules is useless. The improved optics to increase the view range, to be able to spot enemy tanks faster and to just increase your survivability chance. Enhanced gun lane drive paired with a vertical stabilizer to just lower that aim time, because 3.3 seconds aim time is not great, but it's definitely something that you can work with, and you know, 3.3 is definitely better than the 4 seconds aim time you would have if you didn't use that. So definitely go for the vert stabs, and that also allows you to peek and shoot while you're moving, because it increases your dispersion while turning the turret and while moving. So definitely go for the vert stabs. Refined gun, you're not really needed because the accuracy of 0.29 is actually good enough already. Now improved assembly, increase your HP, as you should take it on pretty much every tank. I don't really know any tank where enhanced armor would be more worth it than improved assembly. The toolbox to increase the repair speed of every module, which is more worth it than the tracks, because you're not always going to be shot on the tracks, so go for the toolbox. And if you're getting shot on the tracks, just repair them with your consumables. You've got double rep kit, repair kit with my loadout, so you know you don't really need the enhanced tracks. Now, engine accelerator to improve the mobility by a bit. You know, the tank's a little bit sluggish, so the accelerator makes it faster, gives you higher top speed, blah blah blah, so definitely go for the accelerator. And now this is really something where you can debate about whether you want to take the delivery system and have better cooldown speed, or if you want to take the high-end consumables and have longer duration. Now since my playstyle is a playstyle where I try to put myself in advantageous situations and where I try to really utilize my Hesh shells as good as I can, I would be taking high-end consumables just to have more adrenaline duration and to increase my DPM to a godly amount for a longer period of time. So I would be suggesting to take high-end consumables, but of course you can also take the faster cooldown. It just really depends on your preference. Now that was it for the rundown of what I'm packing with me in random games. let's have a look at a game where I think I did well and where you can see what playstyle I suggest to play with this tank. This was a game I played in the FV4202 on Normandy, which is a map that has got a lot of hills, so I can really just find many spots where I can use my gun depression, and it is a map where you've got a few key positions that if you take them, you can really have a lot of impact in the battle, and that is also what I'm going to be doing. You're going to see that in just a second. I'll be going forwards to the windmill and get a lot of spots just to collect information and pop a few quick shots at the beginning of the game, and to surprise enemies, and maybe even pen a HESH shell, we'll see. Alright, so having a look at the enemy lineup real quick, they've got 3 medium tanks, the T-54 and the Standard B and the 121, which all of them don't really have that great of armor, they're not that great in terms of armor, and so you're most likely going to be able to pen quite a few HESH shells. Same goes for the Kranvagn. It's got weak side armor, as well as on the hull, as on the turret. It's got weak frontal armor if you are able to shoot the lower plate. And you can even pen the lower plate with HESH, which is also an interesting thing about the Kranvagn. And obviously they got 3 big TDs that I definitely don't want to get shot by, so I'll really have to watch out in order to keep my HP and have as big of an impact as I can have in this game. Now, let's have the replay run down and have a look at what I'm doing. So, you can also see that I'm instantly going on my HESH shells because I know that I will be trying to make a quick first spot at the beginning of the game and to surprise my enemies and to just, you know, get a quick HESH shell out. So this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm rushing towards the windmill, which is a nice spot because it provides some cover for you, and also you can just, as you can see, use that gun depression. If I had been in a T-62A, I wouldn't have been able to shoot down like this, so that is really the advantage of this tank. It just allows for a broader playstyle. Now, I see this T-54, and I also noticed that he's probably tunnel visioning, and I'm also expecting him to go back up again. So, first of all, I try to peek up. Maybe I can take some shots at tanks that are behind the 1-to-1. That is, however, not the case. Now, as you can see, I'm locking my turret. I'm pretending I'm not looking at this T-54. He's going back up, tunnel visioning, and boom, I managed to plant my first HE shell, HESH shell into him, which you saw did 450 damage, which is pretty much 1/4 of his HP. It's a little more even. So you can just really see how strong this tank is. I mean, 4 HESH shells and I can kill an entire T9 medium tank. That is pretty strong. Now, I wanted to shoot this Jagdpanzer. I didn't manage to go back in time. I was a little afraid of the WZ, and he managed to put a shot into me. However, I get to take my revenge and shoot the Kranvagn in return. Now, managed to take out the Jag with a HESH shell, and gonna try and put some shots maybe into the grill. He's gone. Okay then, I'll take the T-54, who's again not noticing me. And you can see 2 HESH shells into him. I was the only one who shot him, and he's only on 700 HP. Now, I managed to shoot him again, and I did 550 damage with that HESH, which is really impressive because that is pretty much tier 10 Hori Alpha, which is a tier 10 TD. So if you get max rolls on this tank, it's really gonna hurt, especially because you also have that module damage that most people don't know about or don't really notice. You're gonna not only do a lot of damage with your shells and have really good DPM, as you could see. I have 4.2k DPM with this if I pen my HESH shells, which I'm doing most of the time, as you can see. This tank is just really brutal, and people absolutely underestimate this tank because they're just not really aware of the danger of these HESH shells. Now, I'm gonna kill this T-54 just to reduce their guns, like the guns on their team, by 1, so we are actually one step closer to winning. I managed to put another HESH shell into that grill, and I'm definitely looking to try and kill this grill. Got lucky that he bounced on my track there, otherwise I would have been 400 HP and I would have had to play a little more careful. But I see this FV who's probably not looking at me. I'm a little undecided whether I go in or not, but I'd rather try and take the shot at the FV because I know that this Kranvagn HP, nobody's going to steal that damage from me, so I can just take my time and put 1 shot into the FV because that Kranvagn is going to be all to me. Now he's trying to run away, or I don't know what exactly he's doing. He's probably reloading his first shell here, and I'm just deciding that I will push in. I'm making a small mistake here. I should have stood behind him so that he wouldn't have been able to shoot me, but then again, I have 1000 HP, so if he shoots me once, I don't really care. Now, as for the results, this game, just gonna have a little look here, it didn't take long, right? It's only 3 minutes and 14 seconds. However, I managed to do 6k, which is 2k damage every minute on average, and that is really what makes this tank so interesting is that if you are in situations where you position yourself well, which is what I did most of the time, I had easy hash pens, and if you actually manage to penetrate those hash rounds, you are gonna do a heck ton of damage, and that is what I did. You can see 6k here, of course the ace tanker with such a result. Got the top gun, high caliber, and a scout. Also a scout with this tank, which most people consider to be slow. You know, like, games can also go out differently. If you just get a good position, you can also spot with this tank, which is what I did. So I had a really nice impact in this game. Now in our team, of course, we had a few people who didn't do much. That mouse got disconnected. WZ only got one shot off, but obviously that was a pretty big carry from my side. And I also got a little lucky here and there, but I think the general statement stands that if you manage to pen a lot of hash shells in this tank, if you know where to aim, if you get a little lucky, position yourself well, this tank is definitely one of the most dangerous tanks on tier 10. Now let's just have a quick look at the module damage, because it's actually interesting with this tank, since the hash shells, you know, they do a lot of module damage. So I actually penned this T-54 4 times, as I said. I killed the entirety of him, took away all of his HP, I damaged his ammo rack, his fuel tanks, the turret rotation mechanism, and his gunner. So, you know, that was 4 shots, 4 destroyed modules or crew members. That is pretty strong. Same goes for the Kran. I also destroyed his fuel tank, I think that is, the tracks and the turret mechanism. Standard, I spotted him, and I penned the FV1s and killed his loader. So that is just really what makes this tank so interesting. Is not only a lot of damage, but also the amount of module damage you can cause. Now if you have just a quick look at the credits, if I didn't have a premium account, I would have actually lost 25k, even though I penned most of my hash shells. And that is also another characteristic of this tank, is you're not going to make credits. Like with a premium account, okay, you can maybe save some credits, but I paid 60k ammunition cost, which just shows that if you actually pursue the playstyle that I'm pursuing and try to make this tank as effective as it can be, then you're actually going to have to pay in terms of credits. But you know, if you have a premium account or a premium tank, then you don't really care. Like, even if you lost credits there, it wouldn't have mattered. What counts is to make the tank as effective as you can. That for the battle achievements, and that for the tank. Alright guys, I hope you like this review. Definitely remember that this tank is really only suitable for experienced players, or for players that have good aim, or that are actually willing to learn where to aim. It's not an easy tank to play. However, if you're experienced, if you really want to learn how to play this tank, and if you like shooting HE rounds or hash rounds, then this is definitely a tank that would be suitable for you. It does take some learning to do well with it, but it's definitely one of the strongest tier 10 medium tanks if you get to pen your hash shells. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd be happy if you subbed. If you liked, obviously, if you could share that video, that would be amazing. And if you got any feedback or any suggestions that you want to make, just write them in the comments and I'll have a look and I'll reply to every single one of your comments. Thanks for watching guys, Snake out.